Tonight, the alleged teen cannibal killer is clinging to life as explosive new details emerged that the attack that killed the Florida couple. Take a look.
I just want to let you know that
his YouTube videos portray him as an all-American teen living a healthy lifestyle.
looking and being healthy, that's what makes me satisfied.
So how did Austin Harif turn into an alleged cannibal killer? Less than an hour after leaving this restaurant, police say he attacked a married couple lounging in their garage. Michelle Stevens died from blunt force trauma. Her husband, John, was fatally stabbed and beaten. And now, newly released dispatch tape confirms the suspect was also biting off chunks of John's face and abdomen.
Fire rescue going?
No, sir. I've got this guy wrapped around him and he's fighting him.
Austin Harif remains presently in a critical, non-responsive state. His father says liver and lungs are in failure, possibly caused by an unknown chemical his son may have ingested while he was in the victim's garage. Joining me, Yodit Tewolde, attorney, Lonnie Coombs, attorney, Jenna Kravitz, neuropsychologist, and via Skype, John Cardillo, radio host, former NYPD police officer. Jenna, the one thing I was thinking here is that, a lot of people don't realize that when somebody's in a manic state, that's when they're more likely to commit suicide if they have bipolar disorder. Not depressed, but manic. They will do something impulsive that seems crazy, like ingesting turpentine or something in somebody's garage.
Right, but I think the reports here, Dr. Drew, are that this young man may have had a psychotic break before or even have a diagnosis of schizophrenia that was untreated, and that can also increase the risk of suicide attempt.
Absolutely. In fact, the father's suspect says the son was suicidal the day of the attack. He also says his son showed him a pocket knife and said something bizarre, quote, "I will protect you, Dad. They're out to kill you." There you go, Jenna. That's more in that schizophrenic setting of paranoia.
And he meets all of these risk factors, right? He's a male under the age of 30. He's a high achiever. He's got a high IQ. And potentially, if he did ingest something after he did these brutal attacks, then he may have had some insight or some awareness of the impact of the schizophrenia on his life. Because oftentimes people in psychosis or dealing with schizophrenia don't want to live like that. And that's why that suicide risk is higher.
And Lonnie, there's another possibility here, which is that the dad is setting up an insanity defense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he seems to be kind of lining up the factors. He talks about how a block before his son got to the victims, he took his shorts off, so he was walking in just his underwear. He also put out there that the son severed his thumb before he got to the garage where the victims were, saying that he was already trying to harm himself. But the police corrected that and said, actually, he cut his thumb when he was in the garage during the time he was stabbing the victims. As we know, when you use a knife to stab people, your hand can very easily slip in the blood, and you end up cutting yourself, and the police say that's how he ended up severing his thumb.
Lonnie, I thought they found his shorts like a half a mile away or something with a lot of blood on them, so that would have been before the attack, right?
Right. However, the police have said they have not confirmed that that's his blood. They don't think that that was his blood, so that still is up in the air. The father's saying one thing, the police are saying another thing.
And as you said, when the police arrived, Harif was in his underwear. He was on top of the male victim in the driveway. He was reportedly unfazed by 3 tasers, a canine, ultimately subdued by several officers. John, good news, bad news. The good news is they didn't have to use lethal force. This is not another one of those stories, at least.
No. Yeah, it's not. And this is only about 80 miles up the road from me, Drew. I know deputies in the agency and in the neighboring agency. I think we also have to think about drug use. This is a rural county, not much to do. A lot of drug use and drugs like Flocka, synthetic methamphetamines among kids this age. The reason they didn't use deadly force, what I'm told, it was a confined garage. The canine was already on him, so they didn't want to shoot their dog. That's one of their partners. And there were several deputies. A little different than the case in downtown Miami a few years back. It was a lone police officer with a pretty aggressive assailant. And in this case, what I was told is that the officers responding, the deputies, could see that the victim was already deceased. In the Miami case, the guy was groaning, he was alive. And so they made the decision to not shoot their canine, not fire rounds in a close confined garage, and just grab this kid off when the tasers didn't work.
Let's say John is right and there was Flocka or N-bomb or one of these drugs that are known to cause extreme psychosis, agitation, even reported superhuman powers, been sort of implicated in other face-eating scenarios. if he had taken those drugs voluntarily, his defense starts to break down, doesn't it?
Right. I mean, an insanity defense is when a criminal conduct results from a severe illness or defect so that the person doesn't realize that what they're doing is wrong during the commission of the crime. And so absent a finding that he actually does suffer from a severe illness, his defense would break down. An insanity defense is very difficult to prove, and only about 1% of defendants actually use this defense, and an even smaller number of cases actually succeed in using that defense. So
we're hearing,
have to know more of the facts.
We're hearing that this, for people who are trying to interpret what they're hearing about this kid being in an ICU right now and bleeding from his esophagus, he may have taken something caustic in that garage, causing an erosion of his esophagus. That in itself is not enough to cause persistent bleeding. If he has liver failure, that can cause bleeding. It can cause varicose veins in the esophagus that can bleed, or he could be in the final stages of really what's dying from shock, which is diffuse intravascular coagulation, called DIC, where people bleed from all over the place. Now, in this case, the sheriff's office plans to charge this suspect with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 of attempted murder for stabbing the neighbor who intervened. So, Yodit, I didn't quite get from you whether or not you felt an insanity defense was really a possibility or even a probability here.
Well, we don't know all of the facts, and considering that the family is now coming out with the fact that schizophrenia is actually something that runs in the family.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. Where'd you hear that? I did not hear that. That's Jen is nodding her head. That's important information. Okay, interesting.
Right. So since we're getting that information now, I do see that an insanity defense could be raised. The problem with an insanity defense is it's extremely hard to prove on the part of the defendant, and they have to prove that they suffer from a severe mental defect, so much so that at the time of committing the crime, that individual didn't know that what they were doing was wrong. So we need more facts. But as of right now, I'm not sure what to think. I mean, he's still in the hospital. The police they're not releasing any information concerning the treatment that he's getting, so we just don't know. But it's going to be a believe me, states.
He's not getting mental health treatment. He's unconscious, in shock, on a ventilator. Lonnie, you wanted to comment on this.
Yeah, well, even if he has this mental illness, remember, he has to prove that he didn't understand right from wrong. And one interesting fact is when the police did come to him, he gave them a false name, even perhaps a false ID. So that could be showing that he knows what he did was wrong. He was trying to avoid being caught, from this. There's also this very weird preoccupation with trying to say and proving to people, I'm not on drugs, I'm not on drugs. A few days before this happened, he posted on the internet, I don't need to do drugs. And when the police got there, one of the first things he said to him is, go ahead and test me for drugs. You're not going to find any in my system. That really doesn't make sense either.
Next, we will hear from the alleged killer's dad. He says he knows what prompted his son's shocking behavior. And